we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining me, whether you're listening live over the air in the Little Rock, Central Arkansas area on 96.5 FM The Answer. If you're listening via the online stream at 96.5fmtheanswer.com, glad to have you. If you're listening delayed by podcast or on Krypton Radio or on YouTube or something like that, again, I'm just really, really glad to have you. Got another great show lined up today with a fascinating, always a fascinating, fun guest who's also a legit veteran of the video games industry. Zach, you were saying that I called you the other day. You said I sounded sick. Is my voice, I'm all like, ugh, do I sound bad?
No, you sound fine now, but earlier
I
you
got
didn't.
that good, sick, deep bass. You know, like sometimes when you've been sick, you sound great on the radio because you got the deep bass. Yeah, so I don't know. No, I'm just sick. I wasn't here last week, Zach. I was remote at Game Goblin, so I was just sick of not seeing you, man. Oh, isn't that sweet? Oh, you like that looked like that made you happy. Did you enjoy last week's show, Free RPG Day at Game Goblins?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was a fun show. A lot of RPG news. People can go check that out. All right. I'm going to do some housekeeping notes, and then I'll introduce my guest, and we will move on with the show. Don't forget, this is live talk radio, Geek Talk Radio. You can call in at 501-823-0965. You can also tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. So call 501-823-0965 or tweet me at Shane Plays. ShanePlays. And also related to Shane Plays, you can go to ShanePlays.com. ShanePlays.com. And all the show notes for today's show are up, including the news items and information about my guest and the classic computer RPG that we're going to be talking about today called Dragon Wars, which some people consider Bard's Tale 4. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Last week's show is archived on the blog. When I was a podcast, that was, we did an tabletop RPG news blast live from Tabletop RPG Day or Free RPG Day at Game Goblins. It was a great time. We had like 14 games going all day long. Everybody had a great time. Thanks to Game Goblins and Lee Shineberry and everybody else for working to make that happen. I'm looking forward to doing that next year. And I've got Arkansas RPG Con with Carl Heil, working with him, and I'm going to sponsor the Arkansas RPG Con in October. So look for, I think next week, as of next week, we'll start running ads on that. So that'll be another fun day of tabletop RPGs. The podcast does go out on the blog, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. And last but never least, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio. KryptonRadio.com is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. So with all that stuff out of the way, do I have the delight of speaking with Burger Becky Heineman?
Am I on the air?
You are.
Oh, hello there.
Hey, Becky. Hey, Burger. How's it going? It's for the next hour, it's burger time on the show. So,
okay, there we go.
Yeah. Hey, could you turn her volume up just a smidge there? Zach, she sounds just a little low in my headphones. But for those of y'all that don't know, Rebecca Heineman, also known as Burger, is an industry veteran of many game projects. She was the founder of Interplay. She was one of the
founders.
One of the founders. Yeah, one of, I think, 4 founders. Correct? You, yes. Brian Fargo, and 2 others. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And so she's been there from the beginning. She was involved with Battle Chess, Bard's Tale, many other games that are well known. She also worked on the Xbox Connect project, and was instrumental there. And has worked at. She's really been there. She's almost. Okay, this could be taken the wrong way. She's not Forrest Gump in her simple outlook on life, but she's Forrest Gump of the game because she was there at every key moment. Is that fair enough? Is that fair enough?
Pretty much. I've been around.
Yeah.
And
So
you also forgot the fact that I won the 1980 Space Invaders Championship.
You won the Space Invaders Championship, and it was going on so long they just pulled the plug and gave you the arcade game. What you really wanted was the Atari home computer. So,
yeah, I know. I was denied.
yeah, you were devastated. So I'm sorry. But anyway, glad to have you back on. What we're going to talk about today, and the reason I decided to talk about this was because one of the games that you're the most proud of from your history is now available on Steam as of a few weeks ago. I think it's been available on GOG, goodoldgames.com for a while, but it's Dragon Wars, which is a really highly regarded game among critics and fans, but regrettably, it's not as well known as some of your other games that came before it or after. So, but the people who do remember it incredibly fondly, and I think it deserves more discussion and exposure for the classic computer RPG, not genre, but in the archives, in the Hall of Fame or whatever. And not only because it's a great game, but there's a renewed interest in computer RPGs out there right now. So I think it's really cool to talk about. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I did want to do a quick news segment before that, and Becky, you are more than welcome to join in and comment on the news segment. I promise anyone who's listening live or by podcast, there's a lot of people. Anytime I do computer RPG stuff or have people like Berger on, there's a lot of people, they're listening, they don't care about the news, they just want the computer RPG stuff. I'll get to that really quickly. It's a short news segment, so bear with me. But there's also people who listen to the show that like the news segment. So let's all find common ground and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But let's turn on the super secret microphone in the newsroom there, Zach, and see if they're working. Whoop, there they go. Working on Saturday. Love those guys. Working hard. Okay. So for the news items today, got, I don't know if, I think, but I'm not positive. Are you a Star Trek fan, Becky?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Or still am, actually.
Still am. Okay, well, the new Star Trek is coming back to TV in the form of Star Trek Discovery. It's actually going to be broadcast, the first episode, on the CBS network, and then after that, you'll have to watch it on CBS All Access, which is like their monthly premium Netflix kind of service or whatever. So, there's been a couple of networks that have launched with a Star Trek show, like UPN with Voyager. So I guess they're trying to do the same thing to help. Even though CBS All Access is already out there, I guess they're trying to take All Access to the next level with Star Trek Discovery. Now, we have the official premiere date. This article is from EW.com, Entertainment Weekly. Trek will return to series television on Sunday, September 24th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be 7:30 p.m. Central Time for me. And it'll be on CBS after the NFL football game. And then both the premiere and the second episode will also immediately at the same time debut on the CBS All Access streaming servers. So if you finish the premiere and want to know what happens next, we can instantly watch the second episode on All Access. Go ahead.
Is it 30 minutes long or?
It's an hour.
It's an hour. Okay.
Yeah, it's an hour. And I
wonder if they're going to be evil and do a two-parter, so you have to see.
Here's the thing: the entire season is one long arc, so it's not episodic with self-contained episodes. I guess also to help encourage people pay that all access fee, it's going to be serial, right? Where each episode depends on the previous episode. So,
well, that's what they did with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It was first episodic, but then with the success of Babylon 5, they went ahead and started doing the long story arcs in the later seasons.
Yeah. So it's like with DS9, you had the Dominion War, but even among the Dominion War, you had some self-contained episodes. So from what I understand, Discovery is going to be like deep continuity. Like there, you can't just pick and choose episodes like you can most of Trek. So I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. There are people that are both excited and not excited about Discovery. I'm firmly in the middle. I'm glad Trek's coming back to TV, quote unquote, back to TV. I haven't been happy with a lot of the stuff I've heard about it, but I'll give it a chance. But I still haven't seen anything that makes me want to pay the $10 a month or whatever All Access is going to be. So And most Star Trek, honestly, I didn't watch every episode when it was on TV. I caught up with it later somehow. So we'll see. The other thing, now this I don't like. I'll just right out say I don't like. Got another Star Trek Discovery news item. And this is also from Entertainment Weekly, EW.com. And Star Trek, and you can find all this stuff linked in the show notes at shaneplays.com. Star Trek Discovery is going to ditch a long, frustrating Trek rule. Now, somewhat with the original series, but from the Next Generation on, Gene Roddenberry put a rule in place that the drama and the conflict could not be among the core cast, right? Because there's an optimistic vision of humanity's future where humanity has matured and, you know, we don't have wars on Earth anymore and all that, and we're out there. And so the drama and the conflict should come from what you encounter in space and the aliens and the whatever, or the, you know, the giant supernova that's going to, you know, that's where the drama and the conflict comes from. And that's, for the most part, been a staple of Trek, especially since the Next Generation. Now, you did have...
no, that's actually been a staple of Star Trek Voyager, because the premiere episode, they had the Maquis and the Voyager crew having to integrate, and there were several episodes in which the two crews had conflict with each other because of their integration.
Right, but the point is they worked it out. I mean, the Starfleet people, the point is, like, Starfleet is not supposed to fight among itself, right? So you had the Maquis and you had some tension there, but for the most part, they became like a big happy family by the time it was all over with. You know, Chakotay's the first officer and this, that, and the other. But you also
there was also the problem with Tom Price, because if you recall, in the premiere episode of Voyager, Tom Price already had a very checkered history.
Yeah, they pulled him out of prison because he had worked with the Maquis. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, they had to, not only were they lost in space, but they were strange bedfellows. Now, you had Deep Space Nine, and in Deep Space Nine, it got gritty, but it was never really about the cast fighting among themselves. But you did tell grittier episodes. But what they've done now is they're like, the writers are like, that's too much of a challenge to tell good stories if the cast can't conflict with each other. So we're ditching that rule, which to me, I think is kind of sad, because even though you have very challenging moments in Star Trek, it's always been an optimistic future of humanity. And, you know, we've learned to work together. We put aside our petty differences and all that. And I guess it's just too much of a challenge for the Discovery writers to tell good stories that way. So they just ditched that rule. Now, it was put in place really firmly by Roddenberry for the Next Generation. It was a little bit in place with the original series, but not, you know, super firm. But yeah, when they did Next Generation onwards, Roddenberry's pretty firm about it. And, you know, what I've seen from this is that a lot of fans like myself are sad. It's like, I feel like that we're losing yet more of the brightness that makes Trek. Like, if you watch the JJ Trek movies, they're fun action movies, but they don't represent an optimistic, you know, bright Starfleet future, in my opinion. And I feel like that, you know, more and more of that's happening with Discovery, but we'll see. You know, this is just a news article. You know, it may not, some people are afraid it's going to go Battlestar Galactica, where it's just Shakespearean tragedy almost. So we'll see what happens. But regardless, people can start watching Star Trek Discovery, September 24th, Sunday, September 24th on CBS after the football game. All right. Got one last news. I had 4 news items today, but I want to make sure to give plenty of time to Becky to talk about Dragon Wars. So I'm just going to skip and move to my last news item. This is, okay, Transformers The Last Night got, from Rolling Stone, 0 stars. I don't think I've ever seen a movie get 0 stars.
Then what did they give Fantastic Four, the reboot?
I don't know, man. But they gave Transformers The Last Night 0 stars. Now, Zach, you went and saw it.
I did.
Every time you see a movie, you're like, loved it.
Yep.
8, 9 out of 10. You gave it a 5.5 out of 10.
I did.
Which in Zach land is the total stinker of movies.
I was being kind.
Yeah. Wow. Was it really that bad?
Well, you know, I wouldn't say it was Fantastic Four bad.
Yeah.
but it wasn't good.
It wasn't good?
Yeah, it was just, I'm being kind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I gave it a 5 just because of the action and the visuals.
Yeah.
But overall, not a good movie.
Well, I'll tell you, here's my thing on the Transformers Michael Bay movies. The first one's a fun action movie. I like it. The second one has its moments. Everything after that has just been this big, loud thing.
Yeah.
That it's hard. I can't tell what's going on. It's just craziness. The fights, I can't tell one robot from another. It's just, I don't know. And now somehow they pulled in the King Arthur stuff, right? So I don't know. What do you think, Berger? Are you going to go see Transformers the last night?
Netflix.
You're going to Netflix it? What do you think of the Transformers movies with Michael Bay?
Pretty much the first. I share your opinion. The first two, first movie was a really fun romp.
Yeah.
The second one was like starting to lose it, and after that, the third and fourth movies, I'm like, okay, they paid money to make this.
Yeah.
I mean, they people got paid to do this. And I'm like, how?
Well, the funny thing is they keep making money, and it's usually because of the overseas market, but it's tanking overseas too. It's tanking here. It tanked in China. And that's where they're hoping they're going to make their money is because of the Chinese market. And it's just, this does not bode well. So I don't know. I'm not saying I don't want any more Transformers movies, but I think Michael Bay's time on the Transformers has come and gone. So Michael, thank you for the first Transformers movie. Now please step aside.
It could only blow up the world how many times?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, that's all the news. Like I said, I want to do a short news segment because I do want to talk about Dragon Wars. Before we get to Dragon Wars, got a few minutes before the break. Becky, I did want to ask you. Oh, and I also want to mention you're also you have your game development company, Old School. Yeah, so I want to make sure people know about that. Is Old School doing anything interesting right now you can talk about?
Well, yeah, Bart's still remastered. It's back on.
Is it? Okay, well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. So after the break, we'll dig into Dragon Wars. But in the few minutes before the break, I wanted to ask you, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. The last time we talked, Bard's Tale Remastered, not you can run the original game via DOSBox. I'm talking about you're remastering Bard's Tale 1, 2, and 3. And they were on hold simply because you were waiting on payment from inXile, and inXile had their perspective on it. So what's the most current update on the Bard's Tale remasters that you're doing?
Hey, payment's been taken care of. We're on our way. We're doing it.
All right. Well, great. Any idea when people can?
Cool.
I know okay. So what you're saying is everything between you and inXile is cool.
Yep, everything's cool.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it. I prefer positive news to drama, believe it or not. So,
nope, no drama here.
No drama. Great. So when do you think that people, and I know you've been putting the beta versions out there, but when do you?
I don't know. I'm surprised you weren't aware, but the inXile last week issued a backer note, and they included a video that I made stating that the game was on track and will be done in a few months.
No, I did not see that. In fact, I thought I had seen a headline from inXile saying things were cool, and I went looking for it for the past couple of days, and everything I could find was either, hey, there's going to be a remastered, or for now things are on hold. So I did not. I actively went looking for that. I guess I should have gone to the Kickstarter page. So
go to the Kickstarter page, look at the most recent update. There's a link to the video, and it's just me and Janelle talking about Bart's Tale Remastered.
Well, fantastic. So for those of us like me who haven't seen the video yet or the update, when and I know you've been putting betas out there for people to play with, when do you foresee that the remasters will actually be out there for people?
Well, we already have the beta versions that were out there. We are currently in the middle of preparing to make another update. It's a major update to the game because we've changed the way we're saving the game, and now it's more tightly integrated with the 3 games, so you can actually select which game you're playing. But it's just, now that we are working on it, we're in the middle of putting together our Jira database again and finding out, enumerating what do we need to finish this game to get it out.
Excellent.
Because the game is pretty far along. You can play it. Music's running, sound effects, all 3 games are in there. We're just fixing bugs.
And again, these are not going to be emulated. These are going to be like...
No, these are This is a brand new game engine, a brand new, it's native Windows, native Mac, and the thing about it is that it's just simply playing it's playing the old game data, but it's all new code.
Nice. So, well, I'm really happy to hear that. So I know that a lot of people have been looking forward to that. And when the news came out,
It's going to be over soon.
Yeah. What? Say that again?
Your wait's going to be over
soon. All right. Well, that's great news. I'm really glad to hear that. So, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. And I'm looking forward to comparing, the emulated DOSBox original stuff to what you've done. And I know you said you made a few, not story changes or anything, but you put a few little fun things in that maybe weren't in the original.
One of the problems that we had when I was developing Bard's Tale 1, 2, 3, and even to an extent Dragon Wars. Oh, in fact, are we starting our thing, or I thought you're supposed to do a break?
We're going to get to a break here in a second, but go ahead and tell us about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was that when you're doing the games on the Apple II, remember, Bard's Tale 1, 2, and 3 were originally born on an Apple II. You only had 64K of memory. So you really were limited with how much text you can put into the map. So most of the gameplay was like you would step on a square and you would just notice the effects, but that's all you knew about it. Well, now I've gone through the game now and said, like, okay, you're now on a magic regeneration square. And I put a little text saying, you feel magically enhanced. Or I put a little joke saying, do not enter this room. And, of course, next room is a death box. Like in the original game, once you went to the room, you're dead. And there was no warning whatsoever that this room was death. Now there's a big thing saying, as soon as you step on a square, it says, like, hey, you feel foreboding. Hey, you feel foreboding. I wouldn't go forward if I were you. And then you get the last one saying, like, do not enter under pain of death. And, of course, you're stupid enough to enter. Guess what? You're dead.
Oh, funny. All right. Yeah, and I'm looking right now on the Kickstarter. It's Kickstarter update number 37 on the Bard's Tale 4 Kickstarter. If people want to have a deep dive on the update on the Bard's Tale Remastered. And again, I can't clarify this enough just so people know exactly what we're talking about. This isn't the original Bard's Tale games running on DOSBox. This is a whole new game engine that will run natively on your modern system using the original Bard's Tale game data. So it sounds really super cool. The other question I had for you, Becky, before we get to a break, do you, and there may not be any update, I just thought I'd give you the chance to offer one if you want. Is there any, since we're going to be talking about Dragon Wars today, there's every now and then people talk about, the Dragons of the Rip project you were looking at doing, which was the sequel to Dragon Wars. Do you have, and I know it's kind of like a labor of love for old school. It's like when you're, when you've got money coming in, then you can work on it a little bit here and there. Do you have any update on Dragons of the Rip?
Well, Dragons, we're probably going to rename it Dragons from the Rip, only because it sounds a little better. But
okay.
The thing, though, is that it's a spiritual successor to Dragon Wars because we don't actually have the name Dragon Wars from Interplay. But as it is now, I've got the game running. You can move around. Still working on some of the mathematics for the skill sets. The game will be skill-based. It's very much like Dragon Wars in the sense that there's no classes. It's all skill-based. And, you have up to 6 party members running around. And, it really is it's a nice dungeon crawler. It's using it's using a variant of the engine that was used in Bard's Tale Remastered, because it is essentially, it's a generic role-playing game engine, and all I have to do is attach to it how do I draw the image? Do I draw a full 3D rendered image that looks like something out of Unreal, or do I just do something simple like I did with Bard's Tale Remastered? So it's kind of cookie cutter how it works.
Okay.
But because the system can support classes, which it does for Bard's Tale, but for Dragons from the Rip, it's all skill-based. Everything's skills. There's no classes whatsoever. But it is still one where the main reason that it hasn't really been getting as much love as I'd like to is because I got to pay the rent.
Yeah, you got to pay. So you can only work on it. Yeah, it's because you're not being paid to do it. So you got to pay the bills. Okay. Well, And I understand, given that there's, it's hard to offer a firm timeline, but any idea of when even something, that like even a real minor alpha version or something?
We might be able to at least show the game on one of my Burger Time videos and stuff, like maybe next summer or something like that.
Okay, so roughly a year for an initial look of some sort, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, if I actually had money to fund development exclusively on, I can have something in a few months. But like an example right now is I can finally talk about is a game I've been working on for many, many months, but I can only talk about now is Age of Empires Definitive Edition,
which is cool.
I was working on that for about 7 or 8 months. So now, you can imagine.
Now, who were you working on that on behalf of? Who were you working on that for?
That was for a company called Forgotten Empires on behalf of Microsoft.
Okay. Very cool. So, so you've been busy with that, paying the bills, and that's also a cool game to be working on. So possibly maybe in roughly a year or so, you might be able to offer a first look at Dragons from the Rip. And that's a very tentative. And if people don't know, go to Twitch. Becky does a Burger Time Twitch channel where, she'll show you how to program and do some other stuff. So make sure to check that out. And I guarantee you, Becky knows her stuff. So, if you want to learn from somebody who knows, like deeper than compile, like, she can go down on an assembly level on some stuff. So, if that's your thing, check that out. So last question, and I know you've answered that, but there's probably people who are listening and hearing about Dragons from the Rip possibly for the first time. And I know you've answered this to other people, but to tell them, the new listeners that maybe weren't aware, why are you not kickstarting Dragons from the Rip?
Well, for one, there's several reasons. Number one is the fact that we are just not set up to make a really kick-ass video.
Okay.
We're just not that kind of company. Secondly, is the fact that with Kickstarter, one of the problems of Kickstarter is that it doesn't really raise as much money as you think it does.
Okay.
Let's just say, for an example, I had $1 million Kickstarter. And then most people think, oh, great, I got $1 million to put on the game. No. First, 20% goes straight to Kickstarter itself and people who pledged but never paid. So now I'm down to $800,000. Then I got to pay for all the things I promised, like T-shirts and posters and stuff. That costs money to fulfill. And that could be anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000, depending on how silly I was in giving away stuff. So let's just say $100,000 just because I'm generous. So now it leaves only $700,000. Now, because there's going to be at least 10,000 backers, because you can't really get $1 million once you get about 10,000 backers, and generally it's going to be a lot more than that. You're going to have to hire somebody whose full-time job it is to manage the backers.
Right.
So now you have to pay some money for that salary for that person, plus websites and fulfillment and things like that. So when you're all done, you're really only looking about half.
So what you're saying is, I mean, there's a lot of overhead to Kickstarter that people may not realize.
Exactly. Plus, the other unsung thing is you will get fans who, because they backed you, are going to annoy you 24/7. They're going to say, "When's it done? When's it done?
Hey,
I'm going to
I backed this.
I'm going to visit your office. I'm going to do this." And those distractions, really, unless you are prepared for that, that too is going to be a problem. Because I remember some other companies who did Kickstarters, they got really annoyed in the sense that it's just all the email they kept getting after the Kickstarter, and in some cases the studios are like one or two people, and it caused their product to get delayed so long because of all the distractions.
I got you. So it's not just financial. There's overhead in other intangible areas as well. All right. Well, I actually wish I could go deeper into that because there's a lot of people out there that are fascinated how Kickstarter works. I want to get us to a break so we can come back and talk Dragon Wars. Folks, Dragon Wars, which is a computer RPG that was, and we'll talk about this, somewhat associated with the original Bard's Tale games. It's a great story. It's in some ways, I think it's probably one of the best CRPGs out there that people never played. I want to get Becky's take on that. But we'll be back here on 96.5 FM, The Answer, to talk more with Rebecca Heineman and the classic CRPG Dragon Wars.
And now it's time to give a little love to one of our sponsors. Some Goblins Are Your Friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today. The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm talking with Rebecca Heineman, also known as Burger, who is a video game, computer game industry vet, and is also the CEO, if I remember correctly, of her own development studio called Old School. So what we're talking about today, we talked a little bit before the break about, kind of some of the other stuff she's been up to. Got updates on the Bard's Tale remasters within Exile. Those are back on. Woohoo! And then her personal game she wants to do that's Dragons from the Rip. And that's a sequel to Dragon Wars, spiritual successor to Dragon Wars. Successor. Yeah, it doesn't have the name. Yeah, not legal rights to the name. And we talked a little bit before the break about why she's not doing a Kickstarter for that and is just sort of working on it when time and budget allows, because she's got to pay the bills. Now, when we talk about the rest of the show is what I care. After all the research I did on this, I'm going to characterize this game as I think it's fair to characterize it as one of the best classic CRPGs that many people have never played. So if you're into computer role-playing games at all, and especially if you're into the old school computer role-playing games that didn't hold your hand, and that just so many people remember very fondly, go check out Dragon Wars. One of the reasons we're talking is because recently it was added to Steam, and you can also get it on goodoldgames.com. Are there any other places you know of people can get it, Becky, unless they want to get it on eBay?
No, those are the only two right now, other than, of course, eBay. But then again, at that point, if you get it from eBay, you're going to get a floppy disk, and be careful, because floppy disks may or may not even be still good after all these years.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Some people will buy it just because they want the original box and manuals and all that for collectability.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll also don't forget the paragraph books and stuff like that for Dragon War.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those games that at certain times in the game, due to both memory restrictions and also, I guess, copy protection, it would say refer to paragraph whatever in the book. And as a matter of fact, I've been playing Dragon Wars the past few days, and I've been reading a lot of those paragraphs because you get dumped in it's I'm being very generous to call it a city called Purgatory, and you got to stumble around. And
it's actually a prison.
It's a city it's a big prison that kind of looks like a city. So I already found you put 5 ways out of it because you were based on Matt Barton did a great interview with you, our friend Matt Barton of Matt Chat over at Gamma Sutra back in 2010. I've got that linked on the show notes. That's a fantastic article if you want to know more about Rebecca Heineman and Dragon Wars and a lot of the other stuff she's done. But you were trying to get things to where a little bit more open world, where you had multiple ways to get out of the city. And I already found 2 of those. I accidentally stumbled into, and this is a minor spoiler, there's an inner wall that runs around the city, and I stumbled into that. And I also found the area with the corpses. So that's the only 2 I've found personally so far. But I wanted to do this, Becky, really quickly, and if you don't want to address any of this stuff, you don't have to. This is not a drama show. This is not a scandal show. However, I wanted to, during my research, you've been very clear that Burger Wars, you should do a game called Burger Wars. Yeah. Dragon Wars was intended basically to be Bard's Tale 4. And that's, that's been out there and known by people for a long time. And in more than one interview, including this interview with Gamma Sutra that Matt Barton did with you, you're like, look, it was supposed to be Bard's Tale 4. Of course, the Bard's Tale 1, 2, and 3 are one of the most beloved and well-known computer RPG of the 80s. So that's a big deal that it was supposed to be Bard's Tale 4, but Electronic Arts owned the Bard's Tale name, while Interplay owned like the engine and the art and stuff like that. And Interplay and Electronic Arts parted ways as a publisher.
We parted ways big time.
Right. So they were like, nope, you can't use the Bard's Tale name. So
neither that or Wasteland. So not long before Bard's Tale 4 was supposed to release, I've seen anywhere from 1 to 3 months, Brian Fargo came in and said, guess what? This game is now called Dragon Wars. And you're like, but there's no dragons in it. So there was some last minute adjustments. Yeah, there was actually several other names, War of the Dragons.
Right.
And, they had a bunch of things, but it ended up being settled on Dragon Wars. Okay,
so it's settled on Dragon Wars. You've been very clear. You haven't equivocated one bit that this game was intended to be Bard's Tale 4.
Well, yeah, when I first started the code, it was Bard's Tale 4. I was doing 2 projects. I was doing Bard's Tale 3 for the Apple II GS. Because first I did, after Bard's Tale 3, I then went and did the C64 version, then started immediately working on the 2GS version of Bard's 3, and at that same time I was writing all these notes saying, for Bard's Tale 4, we're going to have skills, we're going to have graph things, because I was getting tired of the numbers, a huge wish list, and I shared it with Brian numerous times.
Right.
And then, as I was doing the Bard's Tale 3 for the 2GS, I was also starting the improvements for Bard's Tale 4, which was actually a lot of that code went into Bard's Tale 3 for the GS. Now, the GS version never shipped for Bard's 3 because that's when we got the word from EA saying you were screwed.
Right.
But
and to be clear,
Huh?
Interplay was the developer, Electronic Arts was the publisher. They're the ones who got it out onto shelves or whatever.
Bard's Tale is actually even more convoluted than that. I mean, oh my goodness. Well, because remember, you have to understand that Bard's Tale wasn't even originally an Interplay title.
Okay.
Bard's Tale started life as a C64 game called Maze Master by Michael Cranford. That's where it was really born. Then after Maze Master came out, and it sold, that's when Cranford approached Fargo about maybe doing his next game using Interplay to help find a big publisher. And then that's when the contract was entered between Cranford and Interplay. Interplay would supply some technology. That's where I came in. The art, and I think Larry Holland, which was a buddy of Cranford, did the music driver. So there was quite a few people involved in this contract. But in the end result, the contract was signed with Electronic Arts, who in turn got the name, the trademark, and the IP and stuff like that for Bard's Tale. But you had Cranford involved as its code creator, and then you had Interplay as the facilitator and the supplied all the resources needed to get the game going. And then, of course, when Bard's Tale 2 came in, that was a story in itself. But after that, that's when Cranford was no longer part of anything.
Right.
And then that's when so Bard's Tale 3 was exclusively myself, Interplay, and Electronic Arts. Cranford was not involved in any capacity.
Okay, so
go
ahead.
And then at that point, EA and Interplay said, no.
Oh, okay. Try to catch that, Zach.
I'm going to have to bleep that. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the FCC will swoop down upon us and drop an F-bomb on us as well. But, yeah, that happens occasionally because people are used to doing podcasts, and radio has those pesky FCC rules. So, anyway, so they split, and then I think Interplay went with a company called Mediagenics as their, distributor or whatever. And so Bard's Tale 4 suddenly became Dragon Wars. Now, again, I'm not trying to stir up a fight here. I'm just trying to get an understanding of, there was an article that came out, it's called An Independent Interplay Takes on Tolkien from the Digital Antiquarian, and I believe his name is Jimmy Mayer. It may be, if I'm mispronouncing the last name, I apologize.
I've never met the guy, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so it's Jimmy Mayer. Again, I'm not looking for a fight here. I'm not trying to drag you into a fight. I'm just trying to get my head around, because he claims that it was always there. And if you read this article, because they're talking about the history of Dragon Wars, and then and for whatever reason it didn't do well. You lost. It was the last 8-bit game, when 8-bit was kind of going out of favor, and then it didn't have the Bard's Tale name on it. Even though, ironically and sadly, all the critics loved Dragon Wars. 5 out of 5. Everyone loved it. Everyone loved all of the innovations. They loved the game. There's multiple things that you tried to do different. You improved on the Bard's Tale engine in pretty much every possible way. It had an auto mapper, all this great stuff, but it was an 8-bit game when 8-bits were kind of going out of favor. And then, you didn't have Electronic Arts distributing it, and you didn't have the Bard's Tale name. So for whatever reason, it didn't sell super well.
It also that we didn't have the ad campaign budget,
right,
and the painting, that Boris Vallejo painting.
$4,000.
Beautiful as it was, it was too distracting, because mostly the ad campaign was just that painting with a couple of tiny screenshots. So people didn't know what the game was. They
it was
thought, okay, this is Boris Vallejo painting, but what's the game?
And they paid $4,000 for that Boris Vallejo painting, which is a classic bit of fantasy art from the 80s. I mean, it's as 80s fantasy as you can get. But that was $4,000 right there, and then he got a credit in the game. Cover designer or whatever. He got his own credit. But what I'm trying,
of course, before Vallejo.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So the digital antiquarian Jimmy Mayer, and again, if I'm getting that last name wrong, I apologize. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. he claims in this article, An Independent Interplay Takes on Tolkien, that's linked on the show notes, that it was always supposed to be it was always called Project X, and then it got the name Crown of Olwen, and then it became Dragon War and Family Dragon Wars, and he's referencing some documents that are at the Strong Museum of computer games, something like that, and he said it was never supposed to be Bard's Tale 4. So, I mean, I tend to believe you, Becky, because you were there and working on the game. But why? I mean, why would that persist out there? Was it the documentation at the Strong Museum was never mentioning Bard's Tale since y'all didn't have the rights to the name or something? I mean, where is this coming from where he's called, it was always Project X. It was never supposed to be Bard's Tale 4. Do you have any insight on why he would think that based on the documentation out there?
Well, first of all, Project X is that at Interplay, when a project is spawned, we just give it a name with a letter.
Right.
Project A, Project G, Project X, whatever. Even Bard's Tale 3 had an initial name, Project something or something like that. Because for one thing is that internally we tended to sometimes have project code names for it, only because at that particular time, around the late 80s, was when Interplay started to become more and more secretive about what games we're working on. So, many times, there was a project I worked on, Borderlands 2, a long time ago. It was everything internally at Gearbox. It was called Willow.
Okay.
And, in fact, Out of This World, the project name was Lester. Then, what was it? Track Meet was, it was something like Boxcar or something like that. It was just, we used all these code words. And initially it was Bard's Tale 4, but now remember this. When I was working on the project, I was under the impression it was always Bard's Tale 4. Brian doesn't always tell me everything, or he never really did. And also, don't forget, this was at a time when Interplay at that time, 1989, we had dozens of projects. So it's not like he was going out of his way not to tell me. It's just one where
right.
He's busy.
Right.
He's busy. So therefore, everything I have, all my source code, all my documents. In fact, when I was looking at my source code right now, Bard's Tale for Dragon Wars, everything in there says Bard's Tale 4. This is for changing these classes. I have all these notes in there in the code engine.
In the engine, in the code itself, so that okay.
And that's not part of the Strong Museum. Now, put it in perspective. I do not know. I've not visited the Strong Museum, so I have not seen the documents that are there. So I have absolutely no idea.
Well, and let me clarify. I don't think that the digital antiquarian is trying to, to say, this is. I think that what the digital antiquarian saw some documents and became firmly convinced. I don't think they're making this up. But what's documented on paper in some museum somewhere may or may not reflect what was happening at the time. So
and from what I'm under the impression of was that the documents may be the original game design docs that Paul O'Connor submitted for game proposal.
Okay.
Because the game, I was given all those documentation because I had to merge everything and whatever and use that as a scenario. And I have all these little notes because I have a copy of the documentation I got from Paul O'Connor, which I think is more, I don't know where it sits in the timeline, but I got this big, thick book of maps and my hand notes and meeting notes with me and Paul and stuff like that.
So are you saying that you have documentation somewhere that shows?
Oh, yeah, I have. In fact, if you look at my Facebook page, there's a photo and a thing called My History of a binder that says Elephant Disc, and it's even opened, and I show pages in there. It's the Dragon Wars documentation. And that one, it was labeled War of the Dragons, I believe, because that was one of its other titles.
Right, one of the titles might have been.
Essentially, it's like, we changed names and stuff like that, but internally I was like, okay, whatever the scenario is, I don't care. Here's the engine. And, of course, when you say, well, we can't use the Bard's Tale name, oh, well, fine.
Well, what I'm trying to clear the air because I think video games are so important in our pop culture that I want to make sure that the history is clear. And given the importance of the Bard's Tale series, if Dragon Wars, for the majority of its development, was supposed to be Bard's Tale 4, I want to get that clarified. So, just for historical purposes, because there will be people in the future, we will be dead and gone, that will actually care about this stuff because it's important to our culture and our pop culture. So,
well, one day I'll probably get the ability just to upload the source code to Bard's Tale 1, 2, and 3, the original Apple II version, and I'll show you I'll show the Dragon Wars code too.
Well, I guess
you'll see all the notes inside of it.
But what I'm trying to clarify, you have a binder somewhere, if I understand correctly, that
it's in my closet.
That equivocally or unequivocally shows that at one time Dragon Wars was supposed to be Bard's Tale 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all my notes on the engine, something that Brian would never have, only because I'm the one who created the engine, I created the technology, and everything came from Bard's Tale 3. Because when I was designing Bard's Tale 3, I made a list of, okay, this is a neat technology, but I can't put it in this game, otherwise I'm going to slip the deadline.
I
put it in saying, okay, for the next game, I'm going to use a scripting system. For the next game, I'm going to do this. And when you look at the source code of Dragon Wars, you will notice that it is obviously it came from Bard's Tale 3.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to move on from that. Like I said, I'm not trying to, cause a fight. I'm just trying to clear the air and because sometimes people can have two different pieces of the same puzzle and they look contradictory, but when you put them together, they can tell a better overall story. So that's where I'm trying to get to. And for everything I can tell that, Jimmy Mayer, the digital antiquarian, he does great stuff. I see him on RPG Codex and I see his website's got good history on it. What I want to do is we've got about 4 minutes left. Not quite that. Radio always goes so quick. You've stated this is one of the games that you're the most proud of in your career. Why is that?
Well, because when I took over Bard's Tale 3, I still had a lot of crust because of the legacy. Because Bard's Tale 2 was not exactly a high bar to follow up. So when I was doing Bard's Tale 3, I really made it more of a sequel to Bard's Tale 1. So that's one reason why the story and everything is based literally as a sequel to Bard's Tale 1 and pretending Bard's Tale 2 never happened. With Dragon Wars, it's from the get-go, Bard's Tale 3 was the end of a trilogy. So the new story for Dragon Wars was to be a brand new story, brand new land, brand new everything. And with it, I then was given carte blanche onto how to make a fantasy RPG game better. And I took everything I learned from my work on Bard's Tale 1 and 2 for the Apple IIgs, Bard's Tale 3 on everything, and said, okay, I don't like numbers. They take up too much space on the screen. Let's use these bars. Let's make the graphics window bigger. Let's go ahead and make it so that the things that you do in the game change things later on, so that the game is totally open world and you're not bound by the story in which saying, go from A, because if you play Bard's Tale 1 and 2, and to a lesser extent 3, you have to go play the game in a certain sequence in which you have to solve this map, and only when you solve the map will you get the key to get to the next map. Then once you get the next map, then you go to the key to the next map. You have no choice but to follow the path. Dragon Wars was, from the get-go, I wanted you to just go to anywhere in the world and start adventuring out of sequence. And by doing this, characters would then remember your tales. Like if you go ahead and save if there was a small kingdom you could save, I would set certain flags that later on people say, hail the conquering heroes, where normally when you enter the city, they go like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, who? Oh, great, another bunch of murder hobos.
Pretty much. And like even when you start off in Purgatory, if you manage to get strong enough to win the gladiator fights, there's a gladiator pit where you can just win your freedom,
right? Or
you get so powerful you can just go to the front door and just kill the guards.
Yeah, kill the guards. Yeah, the guards majored in spleen kicking. That's what the flavor text says.
That's exactly what it does. And that was another thing. I made it so that the flavor text was, I can change the flavor text for every single encounter. Whereas in Bard's Tale, the flavor text was only like six or seven phrases, and that was pretty much it.
All right.
All these different technological things are done essentially to enhance the storytelling.
Well, for its time, it was quite revolutionary and progressive. I actually recommend people go to that the Digital Antiquarian article linked on my show notes where he's talking about Interplay doing Tolkien, and he lists at the top all the things y'all were trying to do with Dragon Wars that were different, and it's quite a bullet list. So I've actually got to draw us to a close, but I want to remind people you can go to Steam and get Dragon Wars, and you can also get Dragon Wars on goodoldgames.com. People, check it out. It is one of the classics, and it's revolutionary for its time, and it's also one of Becky's games that she's the most proud of. I have to ask you, Becky, I've got to ask you the bad joke of the week. Are you ready?
Go for it.
All right. What does an annoying pepper do?
An annoying pepper? Okay, what?
It gets jalapeno face. I'm sorry. Bye, Becky. I gotta let you go. That's it for Shane Plays this week. Folks, we'll catch you next time on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio.
Here's a quote from the father of Star Trek, the great bird of the galaxy, Gene Roddenberry himself. The strength of a civilization is not measured by its ability to fight wars, but rather by its ability to prevent them.
If you read science fiction, the more you read it, the more you realize that you and the universe are part of the same thing. Science still knows practically nothing about the real nature of matter, energy, dimension, or time, and even less about those remarkable things called life and thought. But whatever the meaning and purpose of this universe, you are a legitimate part of it. And since you are part of the all that is, part of its purpose, there is more to you than just this brief speck of existence. You are just a visitor here in this time and this place, a traveler through it. What a difference that makes. As a traveler here, it no longer crushes you that this world is not always fair or orderly or understandable. Your passport allows you to fix what you can, to love, to refuse to take part in ugliness. But meanwhile, you are delighted that this is such a varied, colorful, exciting place. As a traveler, you're not here to judge, but to experience. You begin to feel a new affection for the life forms here. You no longer feel threatened that some may be greater or lesser than you. It's only important that you've been given this marvelous opportunity to enjoy this trip, to learn from it, and in my case, write about it. Perhaps you know where I'm leading. On a trip like this, and it is a trip, its loveliness is not in the sameness of people and things, but in their incredible variety. Eventually, this led me to the Star Trek statement, IDIC, infinite diversity from infinite combinations. Thank whatever created us. We are different, each of us and everything around us. To the end of time, if it ever does end, no combination will ever come up quite the same. That's quite a travel package. All of this is how Star Trek began, and it's also something of what it's about. I am an alien. And so are you. And yet, and this is the loveliest thing of all, somehow we're also part of each other and part of everything that is.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.